What's going on, everybody? Matthew Scott here, Sky Softball. I'm here today interviewing fellow Type One Diabetic and current Charlotte Knights pitcher Dylan Covey. Dylan, thanks for making time to do this interview.
Yeah, no problem.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some, baseball and diabetes.
Okay.
So we're going to, get this interview started. Talk about your, being a pitcher. Favorite pitcher growing up.
So, favorite pitcher growing up, I was a big fan of Roy Halladay.
Okay, Doc Halladay.
Yeah, I liked how he just kind of like, he had that roadblock in the middle of his career where he kind of had to figure things out again, and I really admire that out of him. So.
And now he's a Hall of Famer today.
Absolutely.
Through a perfect game back in the 2010 postseason, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, number of no-hitters, so he was a stud.
So, how old were you when you first found out that you were Type 1?
It was my 18th birthday.
Okay. Ironically, I was finding out on my 7th birthday, so I can resemble to that. Yeah. So, being a pitcher, talk about the routine, being diabetic, whether you're making a start or you're going out to the bullpen. How do you normally keep tabs on your blood sugar?
I kind of have like a routine of like checking my blood sugar throughout the day, like whether it's right when I wake up or right before I eat lunch or right after I eat lunch.
Right.
So I have this routine that I follow, and the closer I stick to that routine on my start day and the days leading up to it, if my blood sugar is good the day before my start, I know that if I repeat what I did that day on the day of my start.
Has that pattern going forward.
Yes, exactly. Right.
So, I have a member of my family who was Type 1, and so am I, along with myself. So, my question to you is, anybody in your family have any history?
No one in my family at all.
Okay. I got a couple of baseball guys. Michael Taylor, former Athletic and former Charlotte Knight. He's a Type 1 as well, and he came up through playing baseball with a few diabetics. So my question to you is, did you ever know anybody with being diabetic coming up through baseball?
Just being a diabetic, like since I found out, when I did find out, I remember I had a conversation with Brandon Morrow.
Okay.
I think he was with the Blue Jays at the time that I had the conversation with them. That was back in like 2010. But I had a conversation with them, and then you kind of just like have an ear for that type of thing.
Yeah.
When like if I know a guy is a diabetic on the other team, obviously it's just kind of something that like grabs my attention, and I'm like, okay.
And that kind of, me personally, that's kind of, related to that as well. Being a former baseball player and just a baseball fan in general. Yeah. When I find out guys like that you're diabetic coming through here, or Michael Taylor, or former pitcher now he's a coach of the Angels organization, Buddy Carlisle. It kind of has it feels good to have that ear, someone you can always ask, rely on.
For sure.
And so, it's always good to have someone to relate to.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And so, in my years of being diabetic, I've learned everybody else's stories. People tell me they get looked at differently or treated differently. And so my question for you is, has anybody ever looked at you different in any aspect?
For the most part, I'd say that people are pretty good about it. Just kind of like, they'll ask questions or be interested and just want to know. There's a few people who I'll meet and they find out I have Type 1 diabetes, and their brain immediately goes to me thinking that I was unhealthy and eating a ton of bad food and not exercising. I tell them that's like a totally different disease.
Right.
So that's the only kind of thing where I'm like, no, you have to understand
your response.
Like that's something different than what actual Type 1 is. So.
And to quote Michael Taylor, he said this quote a couple of years ago when I at a conference. He said, when people ask you about diabetes, it's not your grandma's diabetes. It's two different types.
Exactly.
It's not being not healthy or anything along that category. And so, that's always something that always reminds me back.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch back to baseball here. What's it like playing in Charlotte here in this sort of environment? And excuse me, and being part of a playoff team here in Charlotte as well.
Yeah. It's fun. This is a good city, awesome stadium. Definitely one of the best minor league cities to play in for sure. And we got a good squad, this year, hitting a lot of homers. I think as long as we can have good pitching in the playoffs, we'll probably go pretty deep because our offense is so good. But yeah, I love playing here. It's a really nice city. It's obviously, it's not the big league level you want to try to get there, but
just one step below it.
Yeah, but it's not a bad place to be.
Right.
Put it that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Because I always try to ask people, feedback about this ballpark, and I grew up in the old Knight Stadium back, when they were located in Fort Mill, and I always try to see what guys think of the stadium back then and now. And so, one thing to follow up, your favorite moment so far out of your professional career?
Oh man. Either my first win, which was against the Orioles last year. I'd spent almost over a full year in the big leagues, and I hadn't got a win yet. And so that was a big moment for me. Or I went 6 innings versus Boston against Chris Sale and got the 1-0 win. So that was a pretty cool moment.
And that's something you can tell when as you get older. You
in Boston. So
wow!
Cool.
In Fenway Park, dominating.
Yeah,
a guy like Chris Sale, who's a worthy Cy Young contender just about every year, it seems like.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun one.
So, have you ever pitched while being low?
No, never.
Never
Never in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think I've had that happen to me maybe once, but never happened since. But, I always hear some guys, guys like yourself, whether it's Buddy Carlisle or NFL kicker Elliott Fry, they always got to check right before they go in so they don't have that experience happen.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, finding that routine that works for you. I'd say for a starting pitcher, it might be a little bit easier because you only have one day that you really need to worry about. Obviously, the other days you're preparing and everything, but you just gotta make sure that the few days before that one start day that you kind of get everything lined up. I've been in the bullpen a few times, and it's a little bit more difficult to, just because you don't know when you're going to pitch, you don't know when you should do your workout, so it's just a little bit harder to get into that routine. But as a starting pitcher, since it's so routine oriented, it's kind of nice for me being a diabetic, because having diabetes, you need to be on a strict routine.
Right. And so, that's great advice for anybody watching this at home or wherever they may be watching it. Got 2 questions left.
Yeah.
I did a little thing on social media, I had to try to get some people to send you in some questions. And so we're going, I had one question sent in, and the question was, who is the toughest batter you have ever faced?
Toughest batter. I've only faced Adrian Beltre maybe 2 or 3 at bats. I don't know exactly. He might be 1 for 3, 2 for 3, 2 for 4 off me, something like that. But when he would step into the box and he kind of had that low, you could.
Yeah, he always had it down there.
And he stands really close to the plate, and he's kind of just
swings hard no matter what.
Yeah, he just had an intimidating presence. So I guess that would be the guy where he stepped into the box. I was like, man, okay, I gotta.
You gotta find the spots.
Gotta really bear down on this guy. So.
And so to finish up this interview, for those watching at home, young diabetic kids out there, whether you want to be a professional athlete or next politician. Dylan, my question for you is, for those watching at home, what one piece of advice could you give them?
Just find that routine that works for you. Whether whether it's checking your blood sugar right when you wake up, right before you go to bed, and then before and after you eat, or just finding the schedule and that routine where it works for you, and like if you have a bad day, you can go wake up the next morning knowing that if you follow this routine, your blood sugar is going to stay good, and you're going to be healthy.
Right. Well, that will... Actually, before I forget, what is your go-to... there's a lot of diabetics out there, have certain things they like to eat when they're low.
Yeah.
What's yours?
I usually will just have the classic chewy bars, and I'll use those because I've learned that sugary drinks and Gatorades and stuff like that don't just
mix well.
Yeah, for me it's a personal preference. I just